Hello Greenstylers, Cynthia here today with the Tangled Bikini Top Sewing Tutorial. The Tangled is a flat front style bikini top with optional FBA pieces included, 2 or 3 piece color blocking pieces included, 3 back coverage options, and 2 band widths as well. I will be walking you through the steps today as the wonderful Leah stitches up the 3-piece front and color block back options. And here are the pieces you'll need to cut to make those options. The first piece to cut is labeled P2, called the left front. You'll also use this piece if making the 2-piece front version. In addition, we have pieces P4 and P5, the upper front and lower front. Make sure to mark notches on all 3 pieces. For the 2-piece color block back, we'll use piece P6 and cut 2 mirror images. If making the single color piece on fold, be sure to use the fold line marked with the F code on your pattern piece. There are 2 separate pieces for the band, C1 front and C2 back. Choose between the 1-inch or 2-inch elastic cut line. In addition, you'll need 1 or 2-inch elastic for your band. And optionally, you may choose to add 3/8 inch clear or swim elastic to the seams for additional support. Lay your upper and lower front pieces with right sides facing up on your table. Align the notches and then flip the lower front piece up onto the upper front piece so that right sides are together and aligned along the long edge. Pin in place. Stitch using a stretch stitch or serger and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. With the right front stitched together, we'll bring over the left front and lay it down with right sides facing up. Align the notches and then flip the left front onto the right front. Pin in place. Stitch using a stretch stitch or serger and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. If using the full bust adjustment pieces, you'll need to adjust the side seams of the front in order to match the back. Set your sewing machine to a basting stitch, which is the longest stitch length for a straight stitch. Stitch a long straight stitch along the side seam, 1/8 inch from the edge. Leave your thread tails long and then stitch another row of stitches 1/4 inch from the edge. Again, leaving your thread tails long. You now have 2 rows of stitches and bring over your back piece. What you want to do is gather the side seam of your front piece until it matches the side seam of your back piece. Pull the bobbin threads to gather the fabric until that side seam is the correct length, and then even out those gathers. Repeat these gathers for the other side seam of your front piece as well as the side seams for your lining piece. Set your front pieces aside, and if you're making the color blocked back, place the 2 back pieces with right sides together, pin in place, and then stitch with a 3/8 inch seam allowance and a stretch stitch or serger. Now we'll stitch the front and back together at the shoulder seams. Place the front onto the back with right sides together. Pin in place at the shoulder seams. Stitch using a stretch stitch or serger and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Now repeat for your lining pieces. Now we're going to match up the main pieces and the lining pieces. Make sure to align the front with the front and the back with the back. Pin them in place with right sides touching along the neck opening. Make sure to line up those shoulder seams as well. Stitch around the neck opening using a stretch stitch or serger and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. At this point, if you would like to add some elastic to that seam allowance for added support, you can do that after you stitch the neck opening or even while you're stitching the neck opening. Add the elastic to the main fabric side of the seam allowance and make sure that the elastic stays just within the seam allowance and does not wander over onto the fabric. It's okay if the elastic hangs over the edge of the seam a little bit, but you just don't want it to come into the bra. Now that your neck opening is stitched, turn the whole thing right side out so that this seam allowance is enclosed and you have a nice finished neck opening. Now we'll go ahead and do the super fun burrito roll method to finish those arm openings. Begin by laying out your bra just like this on the table, and on one side of the arm opening start rolling up at those side seams. You'll roll up the side seams toward the center of the front and back. You'll get that one arm start to roll within them and continue rolling. Just ignore those pins. Continue rolling until you get close to the other arm opening. At that point, you're going to reach under the main fabric to grab the lining from the bottom and flip it around the back and over the top, so that now you have two side seams touching each other with right sides touching, the right side of the lining and the right side of the main. Do the same with the front and the back side seams. Pin them together right at the edge of that arm opening. Now you can grab both edges of that arm opening and give a little tug so that the lining edge flips all the way around the back toward the edge of the main. Push that rolled bit in to get it out of the way, and you're going to pin both arm openings together with right sides touching. And all you want to do is pin along that C-shaped curve and just sort of push the fabric out of the way that's kind of bundled up and burrito rolled in that center. You don't want that to get caught up in your clips or in your stitches that you'll do in just a moment. Use as many clips or pins as you like, and we're going to stitch just along this C-shaped curve using a stretch stitch or serger and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. As you stitch, make sure you're only stitching 2 layers, and as you get close to that shoulder strap and shoulder seam, just use your fingers to push the fabric inside out of the way and make sure that you only have 2 layers of fabric going under the needle. Now we've stitched this one arm opening closed, and at this point you can add some clear elastic to the seam allowance right about here, and again make sure that the elastic just stays onto the seam allowance and does not wander onto the rest of the bra. Now you're going to reach inside to grab the strap and pull the bra right side out. I usually prefer to reach in through the front and pull the back out because that piece is a little bit smaller. It can get a little bit tight, so just pull carefully and you'll work it out eventually. Once it's out, you can see that you have one nicely finished arm opening. Now repeat this process for the other arm opening. Begin by rolling up the side that is finished and roll toward the side that is unfinished. Once again, once it's rolled tight, flip the lining under and then over the roll. Match up those arm side edges and pin together so that right sides are touching. Stitch using a stretch stitch or serger and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Add elastic to the right side of the seam allowance if desired. Then reach inside and pull through that strap opening. Once everything is right side out, we're going to lay the bra on the table so that we can fold it in half so that the main fabric side seams are right sides touching, just like so. Once we've got the main fabric side seams touching, we're going to pull out the lining pieces so that the lining side seams are also right sides touching. What you'll end up with is one long continuous side seam. It's going to be the main fabric side seams and then continue on to the lining pieces side seams. Pin them all together with right sides touching along that long side seam edge. And make sure to pin carefully at the intersection where the main fabric and the lining fabric meet. Stitch using a stretch stitch or serger and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Turn everything right sides out and it will really start to look like a cute swimming bra top. Lay the two band pieces with right sides touching, align at the short ends, and pin in place. We're going to stitch them together at both short ends using a stretch stitch or serger and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Then fold them in half lengthwise so that we'll end up with a long skinny loop. You may find it helpful to mark the center front and center back of your band and bra. Now flip the band onto the bra, aligning the raw edges and matching the side seams of the band with the side seams of the bra and the center front and back of the band with the center front and back of the bra. We're going to stitch around the bottom of the bra, attaching the band, but leaving a 2-inch opening in the back to thread our elastic. We'll be using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Alternatively, you could take your elastic and put it into a loop, stitching it closed, inserting it into the band before attaching the band to the bra. Then you wouldn't have to worry about leaving an opening. Both methods work great, it's just which one you prefer to use. Cut a piece of 1 or 2 inch elastic depending on your choice of band size. You can use the cutting chart on page 9 of the tutorial, but we do always recommend that you stretch it around your body for a comfort fit before attaching it to the bra. Once you're satisfied, use a threading tool of your choice. We like a safety pin to thread the elastic through the bra band. Overlap the ends of the elastic and stitch with an X to secure or use a wide zigzag stitch. Close the opening using a stretch stitch or serger and a 3/8 inch seam allowance, just as you did before, and then you are done. Congratulations on completing your tangled swim top. We'd love to see all of your beautiful color block creations. Be sure to share them across social media and use hashtag #GSTangledSwim. Until next time, happy sewing from all of us at Greenstyle.